What's up, guys? Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lanturn, bringing you guys our recap for the WWC Season 3. I did not record this league, and as you're hearing in the background, this is my good pal Zach's league, and it's the World Weather Cup. So I'm going with my favorite noises, thunder and rain. I just can't get enough of this. I'm from Vancouver. It's in the middle of a literal rainforest, so we get a lot of rain here, and it really helps me relax to listen to rain music. Not rain music, sorry, rain sounds. The thunder sort of adds on to the fact that it's a weather themed. Well, the league itself isn't actually weather, but weather theme going on there with Zach's whole channel and whatnot. So again, I didn't upload this entire season, and I was going to make this in 4 parts because I wanted to document the whole season, and I was just going to do like 3 videos of like 4 matches covering the first 12 weeks. But I decided it would be easier for me to just show you what happened in the first 12 weeks. It was a pretty dominant season. In the regular season, as you can see, I went 9-3 plus 34. And this will be a season recap plus my playoffs run, which I wanted to show because it happened, and I probably should have just recorded this league the whole time. I was considering doing it for a long time, and I ended up not doing it because UPA and CL were at the same time, and I think I had something else go on. AABL potentially was going on at the same time at the beginning, so there was a lot of leagues that I was recording at the time already, and I decided to just leave it. But now I'm coming back to it and just recording the end of it because this is a league I did want to upload. Um, I'm not sure if you can hear the phone in the background, or at least the ringing of the phone in the background, but this is going to be a little bit more laid back and chill. Expect a longer one. You probably don't have to look the whole time, but there are replays involved, so I would recommend looking for those. But at the beginning here, I'll just sort of talk about what's going on. So let's start talking about what the team I had was, and maybe the idea behind this season. So maybe I'll actually just go to the tier list first. So this was an Ubers league this season. This was my first season in the league. My good pal Fizzle the Hizzle had participated in season 1, but they decided to make it Ubers to sort of spice things up here at the end of Gen 7, and we were allowed to choose one Pokemon between 21 and 30 points. And luckily for me, I got randomized into the second spot. Or no, sorry, I got randomized into the first spot, but the way that things worked with the draft is that the winner of the last season, the winner of the previous season would get first seed. And so Rye, who won season 2, didn't actually come back, but the fellow he played in the finals, which was Slick Panther, ended up taking the first spot in the draft. And so he chose Yveltal, which was going to be my second choice because I don't get to use this stuff very often. I never ended up recording my anonymous league run, but I got Arceus Electric there, and I just had a ton of fun using Ubers. And Yveltal is something I've wanted to use for a while, just because you don't get a chance to draft it unless you're playing a ton of Ubers. Leagues, and that's not that common anymore. But with the second pick, I decided I want to go with Mega Mewtwo Y. I figured it was really strong. I don't really have like a want. I didn't really have a want to pick Marshadow ever. It was never like on my list of things to pick Marshadow. I just felt like Marshadow just didn't offer that much to me. Zygarde Complete, I think, is complete ass. I also don't think it's worth 30 points, to be honest with you. But that's really besides the point at this point. We're like a month. The last edit was October 5th, and it is currently November 8th. So we're about a month out of actually completing this league. But yeah, I wasn't looking at Zygarde at all. Didn't really look at anything outside of the zone of 30 points, to be honest, just because I figured I wanted to get the most bang for my buck for the Uber. We were only allowed to choose one Mon between 21 to 30 points, so basically my option would have been to choose like a really good 20 pointer right off the bat and just essentially give up the fact that I'm not going to get a good Uber, or take a really strong Uber. And with second pick, I had an opportunity to take a really, really strong Uber. So it was between Mega Salamence and Mega Mewtwo Y, and I ended up settling on Mega Mewtwo Y just because I looked at the stats, I calced it against a bunch of stuff, that I figured were common draft staples, and it pretty much OHKO'd almost everything. It's the highest base special attack in the entire game, and I thought that it would be a really strong threat to build around. Sort of in the same sense of Mega Alakazam, although it's a little bit slower than Mega Alakazam. It has much better, well, I shouldn't say much better, but a little bit better breaking power, much better coverage, and just sort of more of a variety of sets than Mega Alakazam can run, in my opinion. And I just thought that it was something that I could build around in terms of offense because it matched up well offensively against almost all of the other Ubers that were available. It was pretty easy to break all of the other Ubers with an Uber that was strong enough. Like, for example, something that I don't think is good at breaking other Ubers is like Pheromosa. So that doesn't hold a lot of value to me, or like Ash Greninja, something like that doesn't hold a lot of value in terms of breaking the opposing Uber, which I think is really necessary in an Ubers league, and so that's sort of where I just started my build. But I don't remember what the budget was. I think it was like 130 points. Sorry, it was 140 points. So I basically had a lot of time to do other things with my build. I opted into Zapdos second pick, not for any particular reason, just because it was a comfort pick for me. And it was a solid defensive pivot that I could use to switch into many things that Mewtwo was going to not appreciate, especially bug type attacks. So it could take the U-turns and whatnot that Mewtwo didn't want, but it wasn't really taking the ghost moves or the dark moves very well. So it didn't really matter in that sense. I ended up dipping down and taking Ditto pretty early, and 12 points for Ditto may seem ridiculous, but in a league where we're limited to one Uber, having essentially a free Uber for like a lower value Uber for 12 points, I liked that idea. So I took the Ditto. Um, I wasn't all that comfortable with it all season. You see, it came to 7 games. These stats are including playoffs, which may give something away, but uh, okay, spoiler, I made finals, but there you go. Yeah, so the Ditto came to 7 games out of 15 total, which is a little bit less than half. So sort of shows what it was necessarily used for, but uh, it wasn't a bad pick by any means. I definitely didn't take it too early. I think I would have regretted it if I'd let it drop to the 4th round and someone else might have taken it instead. I didn't really value anything else highly enough to take it. I wasn't really focused on taking a very good fairy at the time. I wasn't really focused on taking a very good dragon at the time, so it didn't really matter to me at all. What I was lacking sorely was a dark and ghost resist, which is what I took in the next pick, which was Crocodile. Very, very balanced in terms of dealing with Mega Mewtwo Y's weaknesses. Obviously, Pursuit Traps the bulky psychics that Mega Mewtwo Y may have a difficult time breaking. Pursuit traps the ghosts that Mega Mewtwo Y is threatened by, switches into the ghosts as well, I might add. Also can switch into the dark attacks that Mega Mewtwo Y is not a fan of. And you can see I made it a Z Captain down here to make it even more of a good knockoff switch in. Not that knockoff is necessarily the best move to use against a Mega, but it's still definitely threatening. So those were the main things I picked up Crocodile for, and it ended up being a staple rocker on the team for me this season. I wasn't super diverse in hazards. If you're just looking through the team, I obviously only had Stealth Rocks the entire season, but um, I was pretty good at actually getting up rocks and keeping them there, and Crocodile was a big part of that on the team. Regular Scissor I had never used before. Keep in mind I drafted this way back in May, right around my birthday actually. We started drafting and it's now November. But yeah, the league itself actually ended up taking about 5 months due to bye weeks. I think we had like 3 weeks off within the season and then 3 weeks of playoffs, and one of the weeks of playoffs took 2 weeks, so it ended up being extended by about a month through various means. But yeah, I'd never used regular scissors before, so I wanted to take it just because I've used Mega Scissor before in the past, and I really didn't enjoy Mega Scissor because that 4 times fire weakness is so exploitable, and I wasn't really planning on taking like good fire resist on this team because it didn't really make sense. Um, Fire wasn't like a super big weakness for Mega Mewtwo Y. I was trying to build around Mega Mewtwo Y, right? So Scissor was another thing to be able to break Psychic types, for one thing, and being able to put an Akaberry on it, I thought was really valuable. So I've definitely changed my mind. Mega Scissor I think is still garbage, but I really like regular Scissor. At this point, you guys will have seen my entire UPA run as well, and I really liked regular Scissor in that league as well. Especially with Rain, I think it covered it. So I think Mega Scissor could be covered better with Rain, uh, but I wanted the Rain Breaker there in the Mega Swampert, and here I didn't want to dive into Rain at all. It didn't make sense. So just regular Scissor was fine. Nihilego is something I've used in the past as well. It was just another rocker. It was a T-Spike Absorber, which I thought was helpful. Besides that, there wasn't really much to it. It was just kind of a high value Ultra Beast that was a nice special wall. So, in the sense that Zapdos could be a good physical wall, Nihilego was a good special wall. I took Primarina after that, which I did not regret at all. It was a very solid fairy and water for me, despite not having recovery and me not carrying any Wish Pass. It was very valuable as a secondary breaker, and as sort of a hidden threat when people were over prepping for Mega Mewtwo Y. They sort of just forgot that Primarina and Nihilego existed, I guess, and that put on a lot of pressure throughout the season. Breloom, I've used Breloom in the past. It's a fighting type to be able to break darks, which is something that I also had taken Primarina for as a fairy. It was okay. I'll talk about this more as we sort of wrap up the season, but um, yeah, it was okay. It did its job. I was expecting to bring it more, and I didn't bring it as much as I thought. Same with Haxorus. I thought I would bring it more. I thought Haxorus, Crocodile, and Scissor were big secondary threats that I could abuse, and Haxorus just didn't come as often as I would have liked it to. But the games that it came, it had an impact. Palossand was actually pretty crucial in some of the playoff games, and I'll get into that once we start talking about the playoff games. And then Ambipom only came to one game. It was really just there to soak up the last 5 points, and it hit a speed tier that I wanted between Nihilego and Mega Mewtwo Y. I felt that it was important to have something in that speed tier range just to force people to. Sorry, I'm just going to take a drink. But just to force people to actually build around that. So, the regular season itself went pretty well. I didn't end up dropping anything. This was the entire team that I drafted. We could have drafted up to 12 Mons, and I drafted 11. Um, I had an absolute blowout in week 1, and there were still power rankings at the beginning. I was like the second ranked team at the beginning, and then after week 1, I was the first ranked team just because it was an absolute smash. It wasn't even close. Mega Mewtwo, I got like 6 kills. Week 2, I played the Marshadow team. So the two actual counters to Mega Mewtwo Y in terms of offensively checking it were Marshadow and Yveltal, and then any random Scarfer, right? So I ended up playing the Yveltal and the Marshadow teams, and this was the Marshadow team, which I ended up checking pretty well with Zapdos. He just didn't have good answers for my defense, essentially, and I ended up catching the Marshadow off better. Week 3, I ended up making a pretty bad misplay. Um, I had Crocodile and Ditto against Groudon, and I could have won the game if I'd gone Ditto, got Chip off, and then killed it with Crocodile because I was Scarf Crook. Um, but what I did instead was I went Crocodile thinking I was Big Brain to get the Intimidate off, and then when I copied the Groudon with Ditto, I didn't do enough damage because I copied the -1 attack. So that was just a choke. I definitely should have won that game. Week 4 was a pretty hard-fought battle against Zach that we ended up pulling out. Week 5, I got pretty unlucky in this one, I seem to remember. I lost to a full para, I think, but it was only a 1-0. All of my losses this season in the regular season were only 1-0s. Week 4, I don't recall off the top of my head. We had a bye week in week 7. Week 8 was against Box, and he brought memes. Week 9 was really close. Oh, this one, this was against Zombie, and he was going to sweep me with Blacephalon, but forgot that I had Ditto. And Ditto reverse swept him with his own Blacephalon. Week 10, I don't recall that much. Week 11 was against the Yveltal team, against Slick Panther, and Yveltal was just too much of a problem. I just didn't have good enough resists. Crocodile wasn't good enough, Primarina wasn't really good enough, and Yveltal just sort of like steamrolled my team with Black Glass's Sucker Punch. And then week 12 and week 13, I also don't recall that much, but they seem to be fairly dominant wins. And so it resulted in a 9-3 plus 34 record. And now let's go check out the standings page to see where that was in terms of the rest of the league. So it was first in my conference, which guaranteed me a spot in play. I clinched playoffs pretty early, um, just based on having so many wins, and all of my losses in the regular season were 1-0, so it gave me a lot of a huge differential boost. You can see the second best team in the league was Slick at 7-5 plus. Sorry, Matt at 7-5 plus 12. Pretty intense difference in terms of differential, and it also was pretty weird that I was the only playoff team above 7 wins and that everyone else was at 7-5. So that's just sort of how it went with divisional play, and just how that sorted itself out. But I definitely felt very comfortable this season. I sort of felt like I steamrolled a lot of opponents. It was not super difficult in most of my wins, and I generally felt like I had a really good plan. Throughout the season, this team felt very comfortable, and I don't know how to elaborate on that. It was a comfortable team, and it ended up working out in my favor quite a bit. So we made playoffs, and the way that playoffs worked is that the first seed played second seed, which I think was pretty strange. But I've talked to Zach about that already. It just didn't feel right to me that the first seed would get punished by playing the next best team right away, especially in the same division. So I think conferences and divisions are outdated. Mainly, if you've seen any of my NCL content, this is one of the things that I changed in NCL because it sort of hurt more than it helped. Um, and rematches in general are really sucky. So it probably should have been like first seed from Omega plays the fourth seed from Alpha, and then you can't like rig it as hard in terms of that, and like first seed of Alpha plays fourth seed of Omega, right? Um, but it didn't end up working that way. So I played the second seed in Omega, which was Slick, in the quarterfinals. So let's sort of talk about that, run through the team and whatnot. The first time I had lost to Yveltal, so I built this Mewtwo set to counter it, essentially, with a lot of Spadef investment. Mega Mewtwo Y gets incredible Spadef once it Mega Evolves, and it lowers its defense, I believe, a little bit. Or maybe the defense stays the same, I can't remember. The attack also gets a huge raise. It's like 40 points in attack and special attack that it goes up. It's pretty incredible. So I went with a more specially defensive variant with a little bit of attack investment, and I went with a bulk up set that could have done a lot of work against Yveltal and potentially set up bulk ups in its face. And then Avalanche was there over Ice Punch because I think it was +2 Ice Punch wasn't guaranteed to kill, but +2 Avalanche was. And I was always going to take the hit. So as long as I didn't get flinched, I was fine against Steve Eltal in a sense. And that was pretty much the entire game plan, was get this Mega Mewtwo Y set up in a position where I could do that and just go ham from there. I wasn't actually allowed to use... Normally I would have run Unnerve beforehand, but Avalanche is a Gen 4 move, so I had to run Pressure. And that was the idea behind Mewtwo. Crocodile went with a Rock Z set just to nuke the Yveltal. I don't exactly remember what else was on his team, to be honest. We'll have to go over there in a sec, but I felt rocks were really important to chip down the Yveltal as well. Primarina, I went with an Assault Vest set with a lot of physical defense just to sort of check the Yveltal a little bit better. I can't remember why I had HP Rock on here. I know he had a Zygarde 50%, so this was kind of a Zygarde check as well. Same with the Intimidate Crocodile, was kind of a Zygarde check. In a sense, at least. I went with a Scarf Zapdos. So the first game, I remember he tricked me a Scarf with Miss Magius, and I ended up putting myself in a situation where I was locked in a Roost because I thought he was Nasty Plot. But I just went with the Scarf variant this time instead. And it was a way to revenge kill Zygarde with HP Ice, essentially, and Speed Tie Scarf Jirachi. Palisand, I went with a Rocky Helmet set to check Mega Kangaskhan, which didn't come. I don't think it came in the second one, but it came in the first one. And then I went with a weird Scarf Balloon set as well that was like, it could kind of revenge Yveltal, kind of. Or like it could Scarf Spore it, and then I could get in something like Zapdos to kill it, or Scarf Rock Tomb it and kill it, kind of thing. That's kind of the idea behind the team. Let's run through the replay here. So like Breloom looks like complete garbage against this team essentially, because I wasn't really expecting the Verzion pretty much at all. So the Verzion came, which was really weird, and then I think the Diancie came this time, which was also weird. He dropped like Mega King's and something else, I can't remember, but um, yeah, the Yveltal was the big thing for me, and then he's got some other threats on there. So um, I was going to end up leading off with a Zapdos, pretty free lead, just to get like a U-turn off or a Volt Switch, and I figured the Zygarde wasn't going to switch in, so I could get the heavier Volt Switch off and get my Palossand in and set up my own rocks, I think, or I went for Toxic. Yeah, went for Toxic. I seem to remember being scared of Nasty Plot or Trick or something, and so I went for the Protect, which was helpful there. Against them with Magius, and then I could kind of figure that it was going to go for Shadow Ball again, which it did. I kind of thought it was like a Scarf set at this point, and then he clicked Memento, and I was like, all right, well, okay, I don't know about that one. But luckily I went for the Rocks play, thinking that he was a Scarf set, so we get the Rocks up, which is imperative for the Yveltal, and he didn't bring removal besides the Yveltal. So it was definitely like clutch that I could get up Rocks. That was one of my goals this game, was to get up Rocks as soon as I could, because even though they cuck my Zapdos on my side, Zapdos isn't going to be switching in as often as I think Yveltal will, because I foresee like Mega Mewtwo really pressuring something like Virizion early game, potentially the Jirachi as well. The way that I had designed this Palossand set, it was to be able to break. It turned out that Earth Power actually broke sub from like non-max Spadef Zygarde pretty much every time. I made a misplay there, thinking that he wouldn't sub again. It was kind of weird to me that he went for another sub after he saw that I could break the sub in one hit. And it ended up being a misplay instead of just like taking him really low because he could just get rid of my Palossand there. But the Scarf Zapdos caught him off guard, and we got the kill there. Virizion came in. I figured it wasn't a bad play to just keep clicking HP Ice, but then he shows that he was a Screens variant. I'm like, all right, well, I'm just gonna get my Breloom in here. We're gonna try and get off as much damage as we can because of that Reflect. Didn't end up benefiting me at all. I clicked Rock Tomb trying to get like a hit off on the Yveltal that I thought was going to switch in, or like slow down the Jirachi that I thought might switch in, but uh, kind of saw that this Virizion really wasn't a threat, and even with the crit there against my Mewtwo, wasn't doing anything. We didn't have to Mega Evolve first turn, so this Virizion ended up being pretty free setup fodder for like bulk up Mewtwo. I think I just get like as high as I possibly can against this. I'm trying to stall out the screens at the same time because it's beneficial for me to not have the screens up, or at the very least not have Reflect up against the Mewtwo. So +3 is generally enough. He's kind of like fishing for crits at this stage. As the Jirachi comes in, I think I click Drain Punch. Yeah, so Drain Punch does like a hefty chunk to this Jirachi, and I'm kind of just thinking, as long as I don't get Oh, I was thinking as long as I didn't get flinched to death, that's whatever. But then he froze me, and then I was fully frozen, and he just gets a reflect up on the turn where I click this. Now, worthy to note, I was speed grouping Virizion in Mega form and not in regular form. So to maximize my bulk, I didn't bother creeping it at this stage, and I gained 10 speed points, but the physical defense is higher on regular Mewtwo, so I wanted to make sure that I was still in regular form to deal with Jirachi, which is obviously Scarf now that we've seen it, because I was definitely outspeeding that. So he's like max speed Virizion getting up these screens, and so I didn't get to kill him. Um, before he got the reflect up, which just means that I'm just gonna have to keep bulking up in his face, honestly. So I'll get to +6 eventually here, and basically my strat of getting Mewtwo in and dealing with this is like super solid right here. It's actually gonna switch into the Diancie on a Drain Punch, which takes absolutely nothing, by the way. Reflect is broken. This is a +6 Mewtwo, and I'm doing 29% as he explodes on me. Now, the explosion did 12, really not a problem, but the Yveltal's in now. So I've stalled out a bunch of Reflect. There's only 2 turns left. This thing is the biggest issue. I'm extremely specially defensive, but it's in my best interest to Mega Evolve here to get the extra Spadef to live the Dark Pulse. And as long as I didn't get flinched, I was basically going to kill that. The crit did not matter even slightly. That Avalanche was always killing. I kind of have to hope that I'm not going to get flinched to death by this stupid Jirachi now. Um, but unluckily for me, he's actually just going to flinch me to death, and my Mewtwo game plan didn't work out as well as I thought it would. I don't really have a better strat other than like going Zapdos and hoping he doesn't flinch me to death there either. But he can just go Virizion. So eventually I do break through with the Primarina, thank God, as he gets another crit. He almost hacks me out of this game. Um, and gets a crit on the Leaf Blade. But Breloom's going to be able to pick it off with the Mach Punch here. So fairly commanding win. I definitely felt like I was in control of this one a lot more than I had in our first matchup, especially given that I had a Yveltal counter, and Yveltal basically did nothing, because I think Yveltal was pretty much just the backbone of his team. But the Zapdos strat ended up working out quite well in the grand scheme of things, and the Mewtwo set ended up working out besides the Jirachi trying to flinch me to death. He like suicide bombed his Miss Magius and his DNC this game though, so I didn't get any credit for those. Um, Mewtwo could have broken 30 kills this season if I'd actually been able to kill the DNC, but it didn't, so that's fine. So moving on, here is our team for the next matchup, and I'll just sort of talk about the next matchup. So it was going to be between the winner of 3 and 4 here, right? So 3 and 4 is Damien and Savage, and Damien ended up deciding that he did not want to play in playoffs. So um, instead of giving Savage the FF win to move on to the next round, Zach ended up taking that spot because he was the next highest seed. And then Zach ended up beating Savage. So this is a team for Zach in the next round. So this is the semifinals build. So I brought a Scarf Crocodile against him. He had things like Kieran Black, Mimikyu, Manaphy. He had a lot of offensive threats, Infernape, things of that nature. And I thought that Crocodile, if I could deal with like Scarf and Fernape, Crocodile could just sweep with enough damage. I brought a defensive Nihilego, which was sort of designed to take on the Kieran Black, in a sense, or at least specially defensively. Uh, get it to, you know, unmessable toxic. Rocks were really important against his team too. He didn't really have good removal. And Power Gem was important to break like Kieran Black's sub, which I remember I had to do the last time, I think. He brought like 3 attacks or something, and I had to break the. I can't remember exactly what happened, but foul play was also there for something. Again, I can't remember. Mewtwo was like a really offensive variant. Our Power Gem was also for the Mana Buzz. Sorry. Mewtwo is a really offensive variant with just Bolt Beam, Side Strike, Recover. Just 3 attacks recover. Just very offensive build with a lot of speed. So I was probably outspeeding most of his team, if not all of it, with this. And just hitting things really, really, really hard. I think Thunderbolt was there for the Manaphy or something. Scissor was like an Akaberry set. I think I didn't change anything on this from the first time, besides Bug Bite instead of U-Turn, I think. And it would have put in a lot of work against him. It's a really good Mimikyu check, and he ended up bringing like Banded Will-O-Wisp Mimikyu the first time, which was kind of a strange set. It was sort of just like styling on me, I guess, because Banded Mimikyu generally isn't a good enough breaker with the attack set that it has. Like getting the SD is more worthwhile than having an extra move. And in that case, the extra move was Will-O-Wisp to check the Scissor, I guess, which normally can come into Mimikyu very freely. And if you're the Mimikyu player, you kind of just have to chip the Scissor down with other things and hope that it doesn't roost, or pressure Scissor with the rest of your team, because Scissor is definitely a big threat to the Mimikyu. Luckily, Shadow Sneak goes before Bullet Punch, unless it's a very, very, very fast Scissor. So you can generally just, like, if you're set up already and it's chipped enough, then Mimikyu can kind of just beat it. Um, and then Zapdos, I ended up bringing a Subtoxic Roost Zapdos, which I thought was really effective against his team. He didn't really have the best ways of breaking down um, Sub Zapdos, and I wanted Toxic for the Meganium because Discharge could kind of handle all of his offensive threats, but Toxic was the only way for me to be able to deal with his defensive threats effectively. And I figured wearing things down with Zapdos would set up something like Crocodile sweeping, or speed boosting the Heligo sweeping, or Mega Mewtwo Y cleaning, or potentially SD Scissor cleaning. And I ended up bringing a physically defensive Primarina for Infernape, I think, with like Parasong, Aqua Jet, shenanigans. I think Parasong was there for like Manaphy as well, just so that Manaphy couldn't just sit in my face and set up and sweep me. Um, which I had very little counterplay to Manaphy in the grand scheme of things. Like my grass type is Breloom, and Breloom's just slower than like you kind of need to have something that's either tanky enough to take a hit from the Manaphy and kill it back, or faster than the Manaphy. And like I could kind of do that with Mewtwo. If it was a Calm Mind variant, then Psystrike would beat it. If it was a Tail Glow variant, then Thunderbolt could potentially beat it. But I also wasn't taking +3 hits with Mega Mewtwo. Crocodile couldn't beat. I didn't have any Scarfers besides like Nihilego that could outspeed a Z Rain Dance Manaphy, for example. And I would have had to run like Scarf Zapdos to speed tie that. So that's just sort of how the team played out. And then over here, he didn't really change much. I seem to remember him bringing something different the first time, but I can't remember what it is. He kept the Meganium, which ended up walling something last time, or tried to. But Meganium was just complete setup fodder for Scissor in the last game, so I was actually really surprised to see it even on the team this time. And Nihilego got free rocks against it every time too, so his removal is like Mandibuzz, and I was going to try and get up rocks, but on lead, I looked at his team and I'm like, wow, how does he even beat Zapdos? Like, kind of had to have like Scarf Curum to be able to break Ice Beam or to break sub with Ice Beam, but he didn't bring it last time because it was lacking the damage output against my team, I guess. So I just kind of like led with Zapdos here. It was a pretty free play for me to scout what the Infernape was doing and potentially get a static proc, which I did turn one, and get a sub off because I knew that I could get a sub off against the Infernape, whatever it wanted to do. And then just start wearing down the Meganium. He turned out to be a screens. I think he was screens last time too. I'm just gonna start like wearing down this Meganium. Aromatherapy tells me that he's obviously prepped for static Zapdos, and um, I just sort of have to stall at the aromatherapies, and then I'll be able to start wearing down the Meganium and move on from there. Dragon Tail does not go through sub. Whirlwind and War do, but Dragon Tail does not. I was okay with this switch into Kyurem. Behind Light Screen, I'm not really doing anything to it. I kind of just have to wear it down, but he's wearing himself down, as it seems, with Life Orb Recoil. I believe he did not have Roost on this. But because I'm max speed Zapdos, I kind of just get to sub on this until it dies. So he's going to end up bringing out the Meganium. And you guys can see the chat going by. This is like the origin of a meme here. But really, I'm just trying to wear it down. Like, Zapdos is effectively doing its job for the rest of my team to be able to clean up, because I've got a lot of offensive sweepers in the back. I just needed to wear down something like Meganium, sort of take threats out of the game with Zapdos, essentially this Kyurem being one of them, because I don't really have a switch into the Kyurem. Like, it's 4 attacks, Life Orb. It's got HP Fire, which I would like to keep my Okaberry intact on Scissor for something else, potentially Mandibuzz, HP Fire, something along those lines. But his Kyurem is actually just going to kill itself to make sure that I'm not sitting behind a sub, which is also perfectly okay. There's still nothing that can really kill me at this point, so I just get to roost on the Infernape while it kills itself. That's pretty much all there is to it. It'll either kill itself or it will paralyze itself, which means that I can get up a sub against it. And essentially, once this Scarf Infernape is dead, it should be game over. There's really nothing that can contest with uh, Nihilego after that. Nihilego should just be able to break through the team, hopefully. And then the Manaphy comes in on the turn that I go for sub because he was paralyzed. So I am just going to discharge it here and make sure that he's not in a position to do anything against me. He's Wakanberry, which sucks. And then he gets full paralyzed. And now is when he quits. So this ended up being a 6-0, but it was a really funny meme for a while there. Coward's way out and whatnot. He basically just couldn't beat my Zapdos. And the issue is that he could have beat my Zapdos if he was a Scarf Kyurem, but he wanted the Life Orb for reasons, I guess. He also could have been Roost Kyurem and been able to beat me, potentially reverse stalling me out with enough Ice Beam procs, as long as he wasn't Life Orb. He was sort of just like killing himself with Life Orb, right? The Manaphy full para kind of sucks. Like, realistically, I'm taking a speed tie, right? And I had other ways to deal with Manaphy, potentially. Um, he could have kept sitting there with Meganium and blew all of his aromatherapies, but, like, Yeah, I get it. I get it. I wouldn't call this stall. Like, what I consider stall is kind of like Chansey sitting in front of things. Maybe it is stall. I'm not entirely sure. I kind of just feel like wish passing into things over and over again, and like switching between two regen mons over and over and over again is what I would consider stall. Not me just sitting here like taunt bait. Essentially, this was taunt bait because my only attacking move was discharge. So if he had anything that was faster than me that could taunt me, or like a utility taunt Mimikyu, for example, could have been able to shut me down. If he was willing to take a hit with Mandibuzz, then he could have done that as well. Um, like, I don't think that Mandibuzz was necessarily the best way to be able to deal with Mega Mewtwo Y. In the first game, he brought a Scarf Mandibuzz to be able to deal with Mega Mewtwo Y with like foul play and just outright killing it. Um, I'm not sure if it was that again or not, because he also had like Bone Rush, which caught my Nihilego off guard in the first matchup, but things of that nature. Like if he was willing to take the hit, get the taunt off, go cure him, go for Ice Beam, then he forces me into a situation where I'm probably in a pretty bad spot. Or if he's paralyzed, then he can sort of repeat things and just aromatherapy with the Meganium. But all in all, it ended the way that it did. I don't really regret anything about this game. Zach ended up apologizing to me after the fact multiple times, and it's now, well, when is this game from? September 29th. So, like, this is a month and a bit out, like almost a month and a half out now, and it was just a really funny meme at the time. Um, I did want to cover this mainly because it was playoffs, but yeah, that's pretty much all it came down to. You know, at the time I was accused of being a stall player, and that this was just like a really stally thing. But you know, I've shown you guys the team. Like the rest of the team, besides physically defensive Primarina, which was designed to take on the Infernape, it never had to take on the Infernape because Zapdos just beat the Infernape anyways. But besides that, I had a really offensive Crook, a reasonably offensive Nihilego, which was a speed boosting Nihilego, a very offensive Mega Mewtwo Y, and an offensive Scissor designed to just like break through the team. So there wasn't really much that I would consider stall play there, but that's just what ended up happening. So we made finals, and I was very happy about this because essentially, in August, I'd picked up a couple leagues. I picked up a few leagues, 3 or 4 or 5 maybe. I'm not entirely sure. But at one point, I was up to 11 leagues consistently for like multiple weeks, if not a month. I was playing in 11 leagues at the same time, trying to get my last title before Gen 8 came out, before Sword and Shield came out. Um, and you guys will have seen my Hive Finals loss, which was very disheartening. You guys will have seen now my UPAD League Finals loss. And so this was the third finals that I made, was WWC. And I do still have currently 3 of those 11 leagues left playing. 2 of them are in playoffs. Uh, yeah, 2 of them are in playoffs, and 1 of them is nearing the end of the season, and I'm clinched for playoffs there. So I ended up making playoffs in 9 out of the 11 leagues, 9-11, lol. Um, and at the moment, I had made finals in 3 of them, so WWC, UPAD, and Hive, which actually isn't that bad of a ratio, because especially because I still have 3 other leagues that I could make finals in, and making finals in 6 out of 11 leagues would be very impressive to me. I don't think that that's realistic at all. But just from the sheer amount of games played that I have in Draft League, you'd think that I would have won more championships than I had. I've only really won 2 championships legitimately, and 1 that I've claimed because essentially I would have just got FF wins all the way to the title anyways. So I kind of just claimed that before the league died in semis, which is ridiculous to me. Like letting a league die in semifinals is just ridiculous. So may as well just like claim the title and move on from there. So yeah, anyways, let's move on to finals where I was playing Spare, who was the Season 1 champion, and he had Xerneas, which was a big threat. He also had Aegislash, which was a gigantic threat as well, especially to Mega Mewtwo Y, because I can't really check Aegislash with Mega Mewtwo Y. So I ended up going with like a Calm Mind Mega Mewtwo Y because he had brought Calm Mind Xerneas very, very, very often. Geomancy was banned, but Calm Mind Xerneas was very effective. He had brought it many, many, many times. Many times with Babiri Berry. So many times when I was scouting his games, he was bringing Calm Mind Xerneas with Babiri Berry. So, besides the point, really. But I went up with a Calm Mind Mega Mewtwo Y. I figured this combo of Aura Sphere and Psystrike wasn't bad in this matchup besides the Aegislash. And if I could deal with the Aegislash, then this Mega Mewtwo Y could potentially just win. I had a Crocodile design to take on the Aegislash with Choppleberry for Sacred Sword, and I had Sub Earthquake so that it couldn't just like King's Shield me out. And that was just kind of the idea there. I didn't want to deal with like a weakness policy set or anything like that, so I could just like sub on an Autotomize or a King's Shield or whatever, and then go from there with Earthquake. Get up rocks. Really important that I would get up rocks. You guys have noticed that Crocodile has come to all three of these games now, I'm sure. And then I had Toxic there to deal with things of the Lander Styrian nature, which was on his team and it was very scary. I brought a Scissor with Occaberry, once again an Occaberry set, mainly for just stray HP fires. I know the Xerneas would have had to bring HP fire, and this was kind of just designed to revenge kill the Xerneas. And if it was Babiri Berry, I should say, then I at least get 2 bullet punches off against it. So if it is Babiri Berry, I get to kill it. U-turn knockoff SD. It was just really effective scissor set in the matchup. Knockoff there for the Aegislash. I was running quite a bit of speed for something. Can't remember off the top of my head anymore. Ditto, I ended up rolling with a Kasib This was a really hard matchup for me to justify bringing Ditto. But I needed... Aegislash was just way too big of a problem. Way too big of a problem. So I brought the Kasib essentially to justify to myself copying Aegislash and losing a speed tie with Shadow Sneak. So if I was Scarfed Ditto against the Aegislash, he just gets the King Shield for free, and then all of a sudden my switch into Ditto is completely null and void, and he has the initiative every single time. So there's no point in me even bothering with that, like at all. There's just zero reason for me to bother with that. And so I went with the Kasib instead, so that if I lose the speed tie, I live the hit and I get to kill him. That was essentially everything there was beside on the Kasib play. There was absolutely no reason for me, no reason for me to be Scarf in this matchup. It was such an unset you wouldn't even believe it. But Ditto is way too valuable in the Aegislash 1v1 to take out the Aegislash and open up that hole for Mega Mewtwo Y. That was why I brought this Ditto set. So Nihilego is next. I brought a Scarf Nihilego, which I thought could clean up most of the team if I was put in a position to. I just thought that this was a really good offensive threat against him. I wanted a Scarfer that was faster than Lando, because Scarf Lando made a lot of sense against me, especially against Mega Mewtwo. And so I went with Foul Play for the Aegislash, HP Ice for the Lando. I played around with a couple sets of Nihilego where I was running Thunder Wave instead, and I wasn't a Scarf set, and it was my Rocker, and then I changed the Crocodile set completely. I went through like 5 or 6 variants of this team, just because it was really important to me that I won this finals. Because after the semis, Zach had basically told Spare, yo, go beat this guy, and I was really motivated to win in spite of that. But Dual Stab just sort of tore through the rest of the team that wasn't named Landorus or Aegislash. So that's what Foul Play and HPS are there for. And then Palisand, I ended up switching this from Colbur to Kasib at the last minute. So this could have been a Landorus switch in with the Colbur, but instead it was a backup Aegislash check. So I had like 3 Aegislash checks in the Crocodile, the Ditto, and the Palisand. And Palisand, it was just really important that I had another way to beat the Aegislash with Kasib and just Earth powering it. Also had HP Ice though for the Lando, because this could just be a Lando switch in too. And if it knocked off the Kasib then it wasn't the end of the world, because I could still take an Aegislash hit because of how physically bulky Palisand is. I would not recommend running specially defensive Palisand by any means. It is much more effective as a physical wall than a special wall. I was also considering not running Shore Up in this matchup, but because I wasn't leftovers, I felt like I needed the recovery, and Toxic was way too important against this team, just for wearing a bunch of stuff down that I needed worn down. So let's check out the replay here. So I was running Colbert not for Orlando, but for Mega Houndoom, which was going to prove to be quite a problem, and Nihilego is really my only switch into Mega Houndoom, besides Ditto switching into Mega Houndoom itself. But once you switch in Ditto and Mega Houndoom, you turn into regular Houndoom first, because your switch goes before the Mega Evolution. So that was like a big yikes play. The Acelgor I was a little bit worried about, because I didn't bring Defog on anything, so if he would just like have a spike stacked me, then I was going to be put in a really bad position. But I felt reasonably confident in terms of how I was going to play this game out. So see how I lead. I don't remember exactly, but it was Lando against Scissor. So I felt like this was pretty free. He wasn't going to kill me, and it was a pretty free U-turn for me. So we saw the Melodic
and Melodic was pretty much a free Mewtwo every single time. He showed the leftovers, so it was pretty free for me to just sort of like kill off this Melodic. I did a lot, 69, nice. I did a lot of damage, and he got the Toxic off, which was like kind of meh, but at the same time didn't really mean that much to me. I got a lot of good info against the Aegislash. I remember seeing this Aegislash was like very specially defensive at the time, and then he caught me on a really good switch right away and Sacred Sworded my Crocodile switch. So um, that could have been a really good switch into my own Ditto, but the Acelgor came in, I got up rocks. I wasn't sure what to expect from the Acelgor, and this is a good time to pause. So I wasn't sure what to expect from the Acelgor in terms of what it was going to go for. I didn't want to blow my Aqua Berry on Scizor that early. It was a threat to the Mega Mewtwo because it was going to outspeed the Mega Mewtwo, and I didn't want to go into Palossand for some reason. Oh, because if it was special Palossand, if it was special, it might have Energy Ball for Palossand or whatever, and Ditto wasn't going to take the hit well. So my only switch in realistically at that point was Nihilego, and this U-turn damage showed me that this is like banded Acelgor. So basically, another over prep for my Mega Mewtwo Y, essentially, right? Like I talked about Zach's Mandibuzz running Scarf Foul Play for it. This is more over prep for the Mega Mewtwo Y with the U-turn. But Nihilego now puts a lot of pressure on him, except for the fact that he brought out the Aegislash. So this is like the only bad positioning for me, is that Aegislash would come in, but I'm going to catch him, and he's going to go for the Rock Slide. So Rock Slide was there predicting my Zapdos, I'm sure, just so that he wouldn't be able to get static procced against that. Um, but yeah, I'm going to make a pretty good read here and just sub on his King Shield. This puts a lot of pressure on him now. So I've shown rocks. He's probably thinking, oh, what can this do to me, right? Like maybe he'll go for knockoff and then I'll King Shield it and block it. But I'm not even running knockoff. So I get to Earthquake this Melodic to death, and that was a pretty good spot. So the Acelgor has to come in to break my sub. Basically, everything else is threatened. The Houndoom obviously can't come in. The Aegislash is probably going to die to an Earthquake. He still doesn't know what the rest of my set is, and Intimidate on the Lando isn't going to do anything. Basically, what he would have to do is U-turn into something and sack it, or give up a ton of health on something like Xerneas or the Acelgor, which he's going to do now. So it's basically, instead of going Lando, he goes the Bandit Acelgor, and I get the Toxic off. So I figured I would rather Toxic the Acelgor or catch the Lando switching on an Earthquake, which is exactly what happened. I'm going to intimidate him with his Lando. I didn't have a good switch into Lando besides Palossand, and I wanted to keep Palossand in a good spot. So um, I ended up just going for the safer play and toxicking the Lando, which is actually all good and fine in the grand scheme of things. I get to see what his set is. He's most definitely a Scarf set. He had like Earthquake, Stone Edge, Knockoff, and U-turn. And I figured it was not a bad play to just like Earthquake this Aegislash. I knew he was kind of going to King Shield, and then I make a really good play, and I'm going to knock off on the Lando switch in. I crit probably mattered. You know, the Lando wasn't getting any healthier. Um, it was definitely not getting any healthier in terms of what that was, and I was going to knock off his Scarf, so then it would have been a speed tie, which probably would have sucked, and I would have probably had to go to Palossand and like give up my Kisib Bear. I would have either had to give up a Kisib on the Ditto or the Palossand, so would have been one of those getting knocked off, right? But the crit ended up just like meaning that my Ditto was at higher health. Um, Now, he's really surprised that I didn't bring Scarf Ditto against him, but Scarf Ditto was so on against the Aegislash. I already explained my thought process in the team builder aspect of that, but I wanted to make sure that I could just beat the Lando right away, and I beat the Lando. So his Scarf was out of the way, which I know. I know the Acelgor is banded. I know the Aegislash is like especially defensive. The last possible move is probably like Shadow Claw or Shadow Sneak, something to deal with Mega Mewtwo Y. Mega Houndoom is by far the biggest issue at this point, but I'm feeling like I'm actually probably in a good spot at this point in the game. I've just taken out the Melodic, which was pretty much his physically defensive wall for something along the lines of Scissor, right, or Crocodile potentially. The Lando, his Scarfer is gone, and his Intimidate is gone, which is really good for my physical offense again, so that's a big plus. The Lando is also one of the Pokemon stopping Nihilego from winning this game, basically, with Aegislash dead, Sludge Wave wins me this game. So I was very especially with Rocks up, because it's enough chip on the Acelgor and the Houndoom to just die to Sludge Wave without even having a Beast Boost, and Xerneas is dying to it if it's not Kebia. But I'm going to make a safe play, go into my Scizor here, as he is going to sub. So I actually thought that he couldn't possibly be sub Calm Mind, uh, sub and Calm Mind. Like I felt like he needed enough coverage that he couldn't be possibly be that. He's got to have like Moonblast for sure. He's got to have the HP Fire, which he just shows off here as we break the sub, and he's got to have something else, right? Like there's got to be another move on there. I'm pretty sure there was something else. Oh yeah, he had to have like Psychic or Psyshock to be able to hit my Nihilego, because Moonblast was not going to cut it enough against the Nihilego. Um, so seeing sub showed me that it wasn't Calm Mind, but then he has a Babiri Berry anyways. Basically, Scissor just did its job. I was perfectly fine with that. It could have revenge killed the Acelgor, right? But it weakened the Xerneas enough that I was fine with the position I was in. And I get to just click Psyshock here. The Aegislash is going to come in on the Psyshock. I'm actually going to be pretty unlucky and put it in berry range, but at least now we know what item this is. And we know that there's no recovery on the rest of the team. So wearing this down in exchange for toxic damage on my Mewtwo is probably not the worst thing in the world. Aura Sphere, by the way, is there for that Mega Houndoom. I remember I didn't talk about that. But going to go into my Ditto here, sort of see what he's got on his side. And I'm going to learn something new today. He went for the Sacred Sword predicting Crocodile switching again. But I learned something new today, and that is that I don't transform when I'm Ditto. I don't get stance change. Like, I copy stance change in a sense, but you actually have to be Aegislash to use stance change. And so I didn't get to... He flinches me, which is whatever, but to be able to get some more chip with Shadow Sneak, I don't actually turn into Blade form, which is probably good for me in the grand scheme of things. I think I make the misplay here. Yeah, okay. So I make the misplay here and I go for Sacred Sword, which turns out to be Contact and procs King Shield. I didn't know if a move that you're immune to would proc King Shield or not, but I learned that now. And I'm going to preserve the Ditto and just go into my Crocodile here. Take the bait finally and just go into Crocodile on the Rock Slide, which is really good for me because he doesn't have a good switch into Earthquake. This Acelgor takes it, but it takes 48%. And at this stage, I'm just fine with my Crocodile dying. I can get in my Nihilego. The Aegislash is weakened. I could have taken that Ditto versus Aegislash matchup more liberally than I did. And not gone for the Sacred Sword, gone for another Rock Slide. I think I had 2 more Rock Slides, and just gone for the Shadow Sneak plays. Weaken it to a point where I could just click Power Gem and potentially just win the game, but we'd seen Shadow Sneak, so there probably wasn't a play there. I went for the foul play rather than clicking Power Gem because I know that the Aegislash can come in and revenge me, and at this stage, Nihilego looks like my win condition in this game. The Xerneas is not going to die this foul play, so I have to go Ditto. Because I didn't play well around that. I basically just have to sack something, get in my my Nihilego and do stuff there. But I actually win the speed tie. I don't think it ended up mattering at all, me winning that speed tie, because again, Nihilego can win me this game. The Aegislash is definitely a position where it's looking like it's sitting pretty, but I still do have a full HP Palisade in the back. This can't touch me with Sacred Sword or Rock Slide, and so it only has Shadow Sneak to hit my Palisand, which is not doing enough when it's specially defensive and not offensive at all. The Houndoom is going to come in and just pick off my Xerneas. He could have just missed the Fire Blast and I could have killed him there. Really didn't matter. I just had to sack something. And the Aegislash is going to come in now on the Power Gem, which just makes my life realistically a lot easier with the Palisand. So more chip on the Aegislash is really whatever. He's going to break the Kasib. You see it does 17% through the Kasib and then 31 afterwards. I do also have Shore Up, but Earth Power was a free kill there against whichever he wanted to do. If he wanted to double into Houndoom, I just win the game with Palisand, and if he sacks off the Aegislash, then I win the game with either Nihilego or Mewtwo. And I decide to win the game with Mewtwo and take my boost my Mewtwo Y kills. So we do end up winning the title in what doesn't look like a very convincing match based on the end score, but like once the Lando had died, I think I had set myself up in a really good position to win the game, and he was always playing on the back foot where he had to have Aegislash alive or he just lost to Nihilego. Now, don't get me wrong, he played very well with the Aegislash, very well with the Aegislash. I was not surprised at all by that. He brought a very predictable Babiri Berry Xerneas set, a very predictable Scarf Landorus set. I think there was other things that I was scared of that he ended up not bringing and brought like Melodic instead of. And Mega Houndoom was generally the biggest threat against my team. I think the Bandit Acelgor was really good prep in terms of being able to check Mega Mewtwo Y, but I think that the fact that Mega Mewtwo Y even forced that just shows how valuable it was to this team throughout the entire season. Besides that, he basically had no hazard pressure in that game, which kind of let me switch myself around very freely in this game. It didn't really pressure me at all, and the fact that I could get rocks up put him in a precarious position, especially with the Mega Houndoom and the Aselgor. And once I got the Toxic off against Lando, it would have put a lot of pressure on the Lando with rocks up. So I do think that I was firmly in control of this game for the most part. There were definitely some scarier parts, but this sort of summed up my entire season. And not necessarily this match because I pulled a lot of differential against people. Obviously, plus 34 is pretty ridiculous with 9-3 record. And so this game I didn't necessarily pull the differential, which doesn't really matter when it's a finals match, but I did feel that I was in control and comfortable the entire time. So let's X out of these. So my championship roster, let's sort of talk about it in terms of the grand scheme of my kills now. At this point, Mimikyu's got over 100 kills. Zapdos is now my second highest in kills with 72, and it's come to the most games by a long shot. Like 30 plus games over Mimikyu, which is my highest kills, which sort of tells you something about how good Mimikyu is in my hands. Um, but Zapdos is just so consistent for me as a defensive pivot that I will always draft Zapdos if it is up, and I want to, essentially. I've used it so much now. It's almost at 100 games played. I don't have it in any of the leagues I'm currently playing in or any of the leagues that have finished. So by the end of Gen 7, it is not going to eclipse 100 games. But having played 90 plus games with it, very comfortable with this Pokemon. 100% will be drafting it again. I've drafted it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Only one title. Take that as you will. I only have 3 titles total. Mega Mewtwo Y zoomed its way up the kill leaderboard with a 29-5 record in 15 games, almost 2 kills a minute, or almost 2 kills a game the one time. Very good Pokemon, not underrated at all. 30 points was probably, like, I think the 140 point budget was probably a little bit over the top, but it definitely helped round out the team in the grand scheme of things. Primarina was a gigantic wall breaker in the regular season. You guys didn't really see it in playoffs, but it was a huge, huge secondary threat in the regular season for me. It definitely put in a lot of work. 100% value that Pokemon very highly. Same with the Nihilego. Nihilego was very good. You guys actually saw it in the playoff games, how much pressure it could have put on against Zach, how much pressure it did put on against Spare, and I think I brought it against... actually, I do think that I brought it against Slick, but I can't remember. I've been going on for almost an hour in this one, and I can't remember. That was a while ago. Haxorus didn't really do much in the game. It's kind of one of those Pokemon that if you can get it in a good matchup, it'll win. And besides good matchups, it doesn't really do anything. The one impressive thing Haxorus did all season, I think, was in like my last game. I ran Steel Z on it just to nuke a fairy, and then they didn't bring the fairy, and I just clicked it turn 1 against Mamoswine when they were predicting me to switch, and I just O-code the Mamoswine right out. Crocodile was very valuable in this run for me. I haven't drafted it very much, but it's come to a lot of games in the 3 seasons that I've had it. This is like pretty close to bringing it 10 games a season, which I think is pretty impressive. Wait, UPB is season 1. Yeah, why is this only on 1 championship? This is actually 2. I actually have 2 titles with Crocodile. Unless I dropped it in UPB. I don't remember dropping it in that season. So I do have 2 titles with Crocodile, which is pretty good. Pretty good. Palisand was very good defensively. I had valued this lower at the beginning of the generation when I played in something like Mount Silver Season 2, which was like that started at the beginning of 2018, and now we're almost at the end of 2019. So it's like 2 years ago basically when I played in that, and then Wailord was last summer, so that was about a year and a half ago. So it had been a while since I used Palisand, and I actually think Palisand is probably one of the better defensive grounds out there, especially at a lower point value. You get a lot more out of it than you do out of something like Hippowdon, unless you're running a Sand team. Ditto, I didn't really value that highly at the start, and then it really just became the MVP of that finals match. So I have to give it a lot of credit. Ditto just absolutely smashed in that finals match. Scizor put in a lot of work this season as a secondary threat. I think Bullet Punch priority and the fact that I was able to pressure dark types out with Scissor, open the door for Mega Mewtwo Y. I think this was a very well crafted team. Just to toot my own horn a little bit, Breloom was the same idea. It could kill darks with Mach Punch or revenge kill Scarf dark types with Mach Punch. It just didn't have the pressure that I wanted it to. That was kind of because like Mons like Scissor, Primarina, Crocodile, and Nihilego were kind of coming to like. I think the top six Mons were like Zapdos, Mega Mewtwo Y, Crocodile, and Nihilego, Scissor, Primarina. And I probably could have brought that six to almost every single game the entire season. And so Breloom sort of just fell by the wayside because I wasn't able to bring it all that often. Ambipom was really just a waste. It came to one game and did absolutely nothing. The only thing it was doing was keeping people's speed tiers in check, and that was the team. So, yeah, that's pretty much me discussing the end of the season here. Let's tab over to playoffs and see me in the winner circle here. It was an interesting season in terms of how it had balanced out in terms of skill wise. I definitely felt like no offense to any of the actual players, but it just didn't feel like anyone was playing at the same level as me. I definitely did not feel like it was that much of a challenge in the regular season. Playoffs, on the other hand, the way that the format worked, I don't agree with the way that the format worked, but that's already been talked about with Zach. So, what the format forced me into was two rematches right away. One against possibly the hardest game that I had played in the regular season. And so, overcoming Slick made my path to finals much easier. Um, And Damien would have been, if Damien had continued with playoffs and won his quarterfinals match, I would have had my absolutely two toughest opponents in quarters and semis with the Yveltal and the Marshadow. I don't think Zach was a pushover by any means. I just don't think that his build could have beaten mine pretty much ever. And then Spare had some really good tech on his team, but I ended up just being in control of that match, especially from lead. You know, forcing his Landers to hard switch out into Melodic and getting initiative of my own by clicking U-turn. That put me in a really good spot right off the bat, and that's kind of been one of the strengths of mine that I've identified over the last 2 years. Is if I can pick the right lead matchup, I definitely feel in control of the game, and I make a lot less mistakes than if I'm caught off on the back foot turn one. That definitely pushes me into a much, much, much deeper hole than I would like to be most of the time. So that's pretty much my summary of the season. It is our third title. I am very glad to bring this to YouTube in a title match. And in the air about if I will join WWC Season 4. I'm not sure if I'm going to join to defend my title or not. Um, I'm definitely losing my love for the Draft League format, and I'm trying to take a step back. Part of that is by playing 11 leagues, you definitely burn out a lot faster. I felt like I improved a lot faster by playing more games and just spamming games. I felt like my drafts were finally top tier in pretty much all of those leagues, most of the leagues, which just came from years of experience. I've played 2 years of Draft League now. Um, and so I feel like I'm a veteran of the format and whatnot. But yeah, so I'm not entirely sure if I'll be returning for Gen 8 or not. I know there's definitely some leagues that I'm going to be cutting out as Gen 8 comes around, just because I've taken way too many commitments. Way too many commitments to join leagues where I have friends or that a friend runs it or something, and that's mainly because I wanted to be nice and support my friends. But I've got to realize that I need to take a step back from that and either play in leagues where I'm going to have a lot of competition or stick to only a few friend based leagues where I can just have fun. Because I'm sort of trying to take this a lot less seriously than I have in the past and play other games. I'm getting back into League of Legends quite a bit and also just sort of take my life in a different direction because I spend way too much of my time trying to organize my life around Draft League and organize my week around Draft League and Draft League being the priority for the week and then having other things come secondary. And I can't expect that from other people as much as I want to because people that don't do that are just horrific schedulers. And I have this reputation of being a very good scheduler. And that's because I put this before everything besides work. So it's like work and then I come home and I play Draft League and that's my week is doing that. And it's sort of killing my social life and I want to have a healthier lifestyle that doesn't revolve around Draft League stuff. So that's sort of my rant. This went on for about 20 minutes longer than I wanted it to, but I felt like I got everything out and explained myself very well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will. I don't know. I'll see you guys for the UPA recap as well as any NCL content to finish out the season here. And that's gonna be it for me.